This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Hello and welcome to Six Figure Dog Business. I am your host, Ty Brown. This is on PetLifeRadio.com. I'm thrilled you're here today. We're going to be doing a show today with Shane Whelan. Shane Whelan is going to be talking to us today about how to use automation, how to use software to grow your pet-related business. Now, this is the show where we help you grow your pet-related business to a healthy six-figure per year or more income. And I'm thrilled you're here. Stay right with us. We're going to come back with Shane Whelan.
It's DesignerPetSweaters.com. Hand-knitted designer sweaters for your precious pup or cool cat. Beautiful couture patterns for your pets, including custom-knitted formal wear, casual wear, yachting, and even sports-themed. Many designer pet sweaters include feathered tammy hats, top hats, and a lot of sparkle. Each sweater includes leg loops, front paw sleeves, and leash opening. Visit DesignerPetSweaters.com to order your four-legged fashions today. Large or small, we fit them all. DesignerPetSweaters.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
All right, we're back, and our guest with us today is Shane Whelan. So first off, welcome to the show, Shane. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So why don't you introduce yourself real quick? Just give us a few minutes of background, like who you are, what you were doing, what you're doing now, etc.
Well, yeah, I live in Milford, Michigan with my high school sweetheart, Emily. I own a service business called Pet Containment and a software business called Pet Fitter. And, I love all things business. I've always just been really curious about interesting things and interesting people. And, I'm excited to be on and talk with you today, Ty.
Cool. So your service business, the one that got you started in business, is a pet fencing company. How long have you had that company?
I think we're coming up on 5 years now.
Oh, 5 years. Okay. So you were like in what, your late 20s when you started it or something?
So I'm 32 now. So yeah, probably, 25, 26 when I started.
Okay. And so what were you doing before the pet? Were you in the pet industry at all, or was that kind of your first foray?
I was not in the pet industry whatsoever. And for me, everything I'd ever done in my life, I had just thrown myself into, sports and music and whatever. And when I got to be like a young adult, I didn't know what to do. All of a sudden you get out of school or college or whatever it is you're doing, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, you're an adult. And I kind of floundered a little bit. I worked, just random dead-end jobs. And I remember one day driving to work. I was working landscaping. I would work a shovel 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I just remember driving to work real early one morning, silently crying to myself because I realized I just hated my life. And I just felt like I was meant for so much more. And when I started my business, even those early, really, really hard days of passing out flyers and just 12-hour days of just not, I felt alive. I felt free. And I knew wherever this was going to go, this is what I was meant to do. And I think there's such freedom in knowing whatever happens to you, good or bad, knowing that it's all dependent upon you was just so gold for me. That was so freeing just to know, all right, man, it's all on you. Whatever good or bad happens, it's because of you. And that was just beautiful for me.
That's cool. I haven't heard that part of your story. I've known you now for a little while, and I hadn't heard that part. I like it. Thanks for sharing that, because I think a lot of our listeners can probably relate. I know I can relate. I was in the exact same boat, working jobs. I had tried college for a semester and hated it, and so I didn't do college, and so I'm just working jobs that had no meaning. I was working at a factory when I started my dog training business. I was 25, 26 years old, so similar age to you, and working at a factory, working graveyard shift, and being like, this is the worst thing ever. I hate this. This is every day I go sit in this dank, dark factory that's loud, and I got to imagine that landscaping had to feel pretty similar to what I was going through. So I really feel what you were going through. That's cool, man. So Shane, you had this going on where you're doing this landscaping. Is it landscaping that brought you into pet fencing? Were you kind of digging ditches for pet fencers, or what were you doing?
No, it was just straight up landscaping as a grunt laborer. And, I thought I knew how to work hard, and, some of these Mexican guys are just on another level, and I just couldn't keep up. And it was a whole summer of that and doing manufacturing and stuff like that, of where I realized, like, I just don't want this to be my life. And so I got hired at an invisible fencing company, and just immediately just fell in love with it. From the work to the people to, working with the animals and all that stuff. And it was the first time where I was making like real money, and I was there for about 9 months, and it just became too toxic of a place that I just couldn't stay there. And I quit. I didn't know I was going to quit, and it happened really quickly. But I had learned all these things just about life and people, and I had no idea that I could do this on my own. And I took like a month off from doing nothing, took like a month off, and I started to learn. I started to I could do a website. Oh, I could do this. And I finally went into business for myself.
Okay. So you go into business for yourself. Now you're running that business for a while. I want to kind of transition that to present day, because I know that you were working this business for a while. You've got an independent business. You're not a franchise. And so you're kind of unique in your field. But I don't know your whole story, but I know you started to get frustrated with certain parts of growing the business. And that's where you kind of built your software, right? Can you tell us what that transition was?
So the first couple months of my business was, really hard, passing out flyers and just trying to figure it out. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew how to work really hard. And so I'd pass out flyers, I joined BNI. But so then that following spring, which was essentially my first full year, things just took off like a rocket ship. I had a website. I started marketing that website. I got a van and a trencher, and I was doing it. I had money in the bank. I paid off all my student loans, all my business loans, and I was a bona fide business owner, and I was on top of the world. But the thing about the invisible fence industry is that it's a one-time service, right? And, someone has a dog, they get their fence installed, they might move, or, maybe down the road you get another dog, but it's essentially a one-time service, and you're making a majority of your money on that initial upfront install. You might do a service call down the road or a battery plan or something, but that's really it. And so there's this scarcity mindset that's kind of developed in that industry, of where everyone's on the lookout for that next job, and it's extremely cutthroat. And I kind of learned that the hard way. And so what happened the following spring, my second year, is things went from being really good to pretty bad, because I was all of a sudden on all of my competitors' radar. And that six-figure dent I had made in my market, there was a ripple effect. And all of a sudden, all of my competitors were very aware of me. And I would have a legitimately good phone call with Mrs. Jones. We'd schedule a job, and then I'd get a phone call back. You know what, Shane? We are no longer interested in working with you. And people would just hear stuff and just get super nasty with me. I had a competitor write a bad review about us, and I just couldn't believe it. And it went from being so awesome to oh my gosh, this is insane. And I think a lot of times we view those negative things or uncomfortable things as bad or as setbacks, and they're really not. I think we view them as negative, but they're not. It really ends up being a gift from the universe, because just by choosing to stay in that and to not point the finger, to not blame anybody. Sure, I was in a bad situation, but by choosing to embrace it and learn from it daily, it really was a gift. And so I remember, I went through that whole year, and I remember that fall, my mom, who is, she loves me a lot and stuff, but she was like, God just really put it on my heart, you should start an app. You should get involved with software. And she just kept bringing this up to me. And I was like, oh, yes. And it really was in one ear and out the other.
Did you have a
she just kept bringing it up.
At all?
Not at all. I mean, I know nothing regarding tech or software. But like I was saying, everything I had ever done, I would just throw myself into and be successful at. And so, and I can really geek out on certain things, certain topics and stuff. But she just kept bringing it up to me. And I was like, okay, well, that's cute of her. And so I remember that October, we had what was far and away the best month we'd ever had by a lot. And I was like, oh,
I can do this. I can have a real company. I can live comfortably. And I should point out, like, I had no mentor or avatar to look to. I didn't know what was possible and what was not possible. I just didn't know. And so to have this incredible month, like I was on cloud nine, so I'm like, I can do it. And so here in Michigan, we basically have 3 months off because of winter, because of the weather. Mm-hmm. And so going into November, I'm like, okay, we need to stock up and do as much work as we can before winter hits. So we just poured money into marketing. And for the first time ever, we poured thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into marketing. And I went from having the best month I'd ever had to the worst month I'd ever had. And then we went into winter, and I just didn't understand. And so it was that winter when I took the time to dive deep into it. And it turns out our AdWords were being fraudulently clicked. And so, and that was so demoralizing, because that's not someone talking bad. That's not someone writing a bad review. And it's not something I can just willpower through. You know what I mean? Like, anyone can click it. Yeah. It's literally, not only are they eating up the ad spend, they're just killing the tens of thousands of dollars in lost revenue from that. And so that was when it was like, okay, I got to dig deep and I got to figure this out. And so I had heard about this quoting software for window washers called Responsibid. You count the windows and what kind of windows and inside and out, and it gives the perfect proposal, anywhere from 1 to 5 quotes. And then on the back end, it follows up with you like, hey, Mrs. Jones, just seeing if you still want to keep your windows clean, blah, blah, blah. I remember thinking, oh, that seems cute. Maybe I should check that out and see if that'll work. And I remember I went to them and was like, I want you guys to build this for me and only for me. And they were like, no. I'm like, pretty please. And they said, no. I said, pretty please. They said, no. And so I somehow finagled my way into a meeting with the owner, and he proposed the idea to me for them basically to build out a pet fencing module, and basically for me to buy it off of them and to own it and further develop it and to have it not only for myself, but for the rest of the pet fencing world. And, since that time, they've branched out from window washing to other areas of cleaning, and we've branched out to other areas of the pet service world, like dog training, pet waste pickup, pet sitting, all sorts of modules. But when I scratched the surface of that and I realized what that could do, I spent that entire winter and I weaponized that thing, man. That was my secret weapon. And when spring hit, I was all of a sudden able to get out of the field. I brought a couple of employees on, and things just took off like a rocket ship. We literally, the first 3 months we implemented sales automation, we literally doubled our revenue. We use a thing called Mile IQ that tracks the amount of miles you drive. So we were doing double the revenue, but because we were able to do over the phone consultations and proposals, we weren't driving out to every single person for a consultation. So even though we were doing double the work, we were driving less miles. And then we had to cut our marketing budget in half just to be able to keep up with all this new work we were doing.
That's awesome. And this is what I want to dig into. So, your backstory is really cool. Because like I say, I think a lot of business owners, myself included, can really relate to, not quite sure what to do. So you just get in there and you do. And you do and you do, and you have success, you have failure, you have success, you have failure. And from that, you really hone in on what you're good at and what you want to do. So all of this has led you up to now where you have this automation software. And so what I want to do is take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about automation in general, like what automation can do for businesses, because I think we're in an industry that is ready for automation, that almost nobody's using it, and it's such a big deal if people can use automation. And of course, we'll talk about your automation, but I want to talk about automation in general, so that people start thinking in terms of how can we automate our processes. So stay with us. We're going to come right back.
I have 2 dogs, Sam and Bailey. Both are golden retrievers. Poor Sam, he was a mess. Always itching. His paws were soaking wet all day from just constant licking. He had bald spots on his back. I just don't like putting shots and steroids into your dog all the time. DINOVITE.com. Dinovite is nutrition. Probably 2 weeks after he started Dinovite, I started seeing great improvements, and today 99% of his issues are non-existent. It's amazing stuff. Since Bailey has been 12 weeks old, he's been a Dinovite dog, and he has 0 issues today. He won't eat his food without Dinovite. When I get out the Dinovite, my dogs actually salivate, like I'm getting them a treat. They drool over it. Dynovite is the best thing you can do for your dog.
You won't believe how happy your dog will be.
I get my Dynovite from DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
All right, guys, we're back. And so we're talking with Shane Whelan about his story of building a pet fence business and then using that to build automation. Now, initially, you had it built so that it could just give bids to people, right? That you wanted to, when somebody's interested in a bid, they can put, here's the dimensions of my yard, here's how many dogs I have, here's where I live, and it'll give them a cost, right? Is that what it was initially built for?
Yeah.
Okay. What did it like? Well, talk to me about what was the automation components. What are the things that were automated that allowed you guys to grow so much? Was it the bidding part? Was it I know the sales improved because you could do it over the phone, but why did this allow you to do things over the phone? Kind of give me some of the background on what were the key 2 or 3 key things that automation did that improved your business?
Well, it's probably a number of factors. One of the biggest ones was the fact that I was no longer in the field, and 100% of my time was spent towards driving revenue and taking care of, troubleshooting, little things like that. So I was able to take every phone call. I could fully engage with every single person. That was when you're not the line, you're not the cook and the janitor and the waitress and the host. You know what I mean? When I could just go deep on one thing, that was big. But having the ability to give someone an instant consultation or an instant proposal, you think of any job or client that you've ever lost out on. I mean, in your heart of hearts, on your best day, you're the best one for the job. No one's going to serve your clients at a higher level. No one serves their employees at a higher level. Everything you do is for your business and for your family. And so when you lose out on that new client or that new job, it's only because you didn't properly demonstrate your value. So to have the ability to give someone an instant consultation, whether it's over the phone, in person, or directly from your website, one that talks about, with video integration, that talks about you, that talks about your family, that talks about why you started your business, was extremely powerful, not only, even though you're not the cheapest, they're just excited to meet you. They're excited to have your employees in their yard and work with their dog because you're just able to convey so much in an instant. And then on the back end, the ability to follow up, hey, Mrs. Jones, just seeing if you still wanted to keep Fluffy safe, blah, 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 or to remind an office admin, hey, you got to call Mrs. Jones. She's got a new rescue who's, she's really worried about this and that. And that way, not only is everyone getting the perfect proposal instantly, but everyone's getting the perfect follow-up, whether it's through automation or automation reminders to follow up.
All right, so I've got 2 questions on that. So I can picture somebody listening to this and saying, well, all right, before you're going to people's homes in order to give them a bid. Now you're basically over the phone, so they don't actually get to meet you. I mean, you're sending them a really nice proposal, like it looks good in their email, all of that stuff. But isn't there something to be said for actually being with the person in their home? How are you able to close deals without being with the person in their home?
Oh, 100%. And we always gave people the option, and we still do and bid in-person proposals or consultations. The difference is that now we had the ability to do it over the phone. And that's something a lot of our competitors couldn't do. But having the fluidity and the freedom in your sales process to do it over the phone, it was interesting because things got to be so busy and so chaotic that we started to raise our prices just to slow things down and level things out. And at a certain point, we were just throwing numbers out there and people didn't care. They wanted to work with us. We were faster. We were leaner. We were cleaner than our competition. And we had the ability to meet the customer where they're at and however they wanted to do business with us.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so I like that because obviously before this, before having an automation software, it's not like you could just, I'm sure you could like over the phone be like, well, like what are the general dimensions? And then you could say like, okay, well, it's probably going to be about X amount of dollars. Whereas for you to take all the data, plug it into a system and have like a very accurate quote come out in a very professional way in their email, in their text message was probably kind of a big game changer, right? Like, because I'm sure like you're not the only one quoting people over the phone. But having the automation do a bunch of that work is what made those proposals come across way more professional, right?
Well, yeah, and we weren't like super nitpicky and like, oh, you have, your yard's this big. We weren't super like, but because I knew at the end of the day, our margins were good enough. Even if we were wrong by like a little bit, our margins were good enough that there really wasn't, mistakes really couldn't be made. And it wasn't really about the quote. It was about the presentation. It was about the conveying of your value. And like I said, we raised our prices astronomically, and it didn't really change much because we were actually closing more deals because having the ability to properly convey your value instantly was just such a game changer for us.
So now you said that a few times. What do you mean by properly convey value? Like what could somebody take away when they're hearing that?
Well, like I was saying, like Ty, how high level your dog training is and how high level your employees are. You know the results that you give. And so when somebody doesn't go with you, maybe you had an off day, but maybe they, had an off day and weren't hearing you. But on your best day, you're the best one for the job in your market. And so when somebody doesn't go with you, it's only because you didn't properly demonstrate who you were, what your company was, and like I said, everything you do is for your family, for your employees, for your clients. And so when they don't go with you, it's only because you guys missed each other somehow. You didn't properly demonstrate who you were in that moment or in your follow-up. And so this is a systemized ability to properly convey your value.
So let me ask you about that because, the second part that I wanted to ask about, which is the follow-up. Follow-up is something that I've been preaching to dog trainers and dog business owners for a long time, that when you have a sales conversation to where you say, here's my value, here's what we're good at, here's the price, here's our terms, et cetera, that ends the conversation for so many pet professionals. They don't do any follow-up after. And in fact, I have met so many pet professionals who will like look down their nose at follow-up and say, no, if they're really interested, they'll come back to me. But what you're saying is you've automated the follow-up process to where you're saying, okay, we've given them the bid, we've had the sales conversation, but we're not going to end it there. Do you have any, I don't know if you have numbers or just an idea or something that you could, share with us that like, hey, once we automated the follow-up process, here's what happened? Like, what can you tell us about following up?
Well, I almost don't like the word automation. It almost sounds like robotical, mechanical. And I think in the pet world, you're dealing with people's babies. These are only one step down from people's kids. And in my world, dealing with pet safety, you don't want to come across as too mechanical. So I almost like the word optimization better, like an optimized follow-up program. But, the best sales trainers in the world all say it. Follow-up is the holy grail of sales. And whether you agree with that or disagree with that, you don't have to do everything. Like just having reminders to an office admin or to you. I know how much stuff can go on in a day. You can have a legitimately good phone call with Mrs. Jones. She'll tell you all about her new rescue dog. And an hour later, it is gone from my brain. There's so much hard drive space taken up now. I just don't remember stuff like I used to. And so in a week or in 3 days or whenever she has to get that reminder, oh, hey, this is Mrs. Jones, and all those details come flooding back to you in a text message. Oh, I got to call Mrs. Jones. And or just a text reminder to her or an email reminder to her. It doesn't have to be super complex and crazy, but that is, sometimes the smallest implementation, even just a reminder to yourself, is such a game changer, man. Can change so much for you.
Yeah, and I agree. And this is what initially drew me to your software, but because the follow-up is really cool with what your software can do. Now, but just on a concept level, the thing that I hear from like dog trainers and dog business owners is, well, if I'm the one doing the follow-up, it means that they're not interested. It means that, I don't want to chase clients. I don't want to do this or that. And what I want to highlight is something that you said. You said that after you had the conversation, it's out of your mind. It's out of your brain, which is the way it is with me. But it's also the same way with the dog owners that we're talking with, that, they are looking for training. They are looking for a fence. They are looking for grooming. They are looking for boarding, whatever they're looking for it. But they also have a job. They also have kids. They got soccer practice. And so they could have loved everything about what you said. But if that interest wanes and they don't make a decision, then that doesn't mean that they're not going to be a good client necessarily. And so you following up with them isn't you chasing. You following up with them is just simply giving reminders. And, and if they legitimately don't want your service, that's fine. You don't contact them again. But if there's so many people, we've looked at our numbers, and I don't track them religiously, but almost about half of our sales come because of following up. We follow up with the person later and they're like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to call you back. And maybe they would have eventually, but that follow-up process is so important. And that's again, to kind of break it down to the two things that I'm pulling out of what you said. You have optimized the process for putting your best foot forward so that you're showing people in the best possible way, here's who we are, here's what's different, here's what's unique. And then you've optimized the process of following up with them afterwards so that afterwards you can continually stay top of mind with them and therefore close more deals and, effectively serve more people, make more money, that type of stuff. Am I summarizing that pretty good?
Yeah, I do think the ability to give an instant consultation, the ability to, that has video integration that says who you are, that breaks down everything, that kind of sums up who you are. I mean, that right there, having the ability to do that, one that's interactive with the prospect. I mean, that right there is going to raise your close rate up just off the bat, 20, 25%. But on the back end, having the ability just to even stay organized with your leads and just to stay top of mind doesn't mean you're being a cheesy salesman. It means that you're staying top of mind. You're staying in touch with them. People are really busy and they're just like you and me. I mean, they might talk to you. Your information's gone from their brain too, and you just miss out on so much money by not making the effort to follow up with people,
Yeah, and that's why I love automation or optimization or what have you, to where there's just simply a process that even if it just reminds you, and then you're making a physical personal touch with a text message or a phone call or something. And I know in my industry of dog trainers, and I know in industries like grooming and pet sitting and dog walking and stuff like that, I know this is a big problem because we get so in the weeds with our business that I think a lot of people would love to follow up with their clients or with their prospects, but life gets in the way. They don't have a system for doing it. And because there's no system, it just doesn't get done. And when it does get done, it's just like that. Oh yeah, I remember I talked with James on Tuesday. He was a good guy. I think, yeah, let me text him. So that's the follow up that most people are doing right now, rather than, more legitimate, systematized, optimized follow-up. And so anyways, that's why I wanted to have you on. I did want to talk about your software and let people know how they could look at your software. But I also want to just get people thinking in terms of what can I optimize in my process? How can I create systems so that, I'm not beholden on writing notes in a notepad and trying to remember things and, it's where I've got one system that does stuff for me. So
yeah, and you can get really creative. You can get super creative with that. Even in your follow-up, if you have a short video, telling them about your backstory. Maybe you have an employee who is in the military talking about, how they serve their country. We have videos on the back end of when we're done working with them that recap their training, that recap their particular system. And that right there, I mean, do you know how many headaches that saves with us? Because we're sending, follow-up videos that recap their exact system, their exact training points. I mean, that right there saves so many headache phone calls. We're more organized, and the customer feels that we're more organized, that we serve them at a higher level. And yeah, just having less headache customers to focus on what really matters was so huge.
That's cool. So thanks for being on. Like I said, you've designed this, or you've got this software. What's the name of the software? How can people find it? How can they learn more about it?
It's called Pet Bitter. You can go to petbitter.com, and then anyone who's a Ty Brown listener gets a special discount. So definitely check it out. It is truly a game changer for you.
Okay, so petbitter.com. Like I say, guys, I really like it. Like, this is we've used this software. It's a great software. I've got a lot of clients that I have that use this software, so we recommend it to folks. I didn't want this to be like a commercial of like, use PetBitter, although I do want people to use PetBitter. But yeah. What I'm getting at is look for software that can take stuff off your plate. I see that more and more now in dog training message boards on Facebook. I'm like, what software are you guys using? What software are you guys using? And there's almost nothing designed for our industry. And so it's cool to come along one that, is actually designed for this industry. So thanks for being on the show today. And we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ty. I'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks, Shane. All right. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of Six Figure Dog Business on PetLifeRadio.com. Again, I'm your host, Ty Brown. Go to TyTheDogGuy.com if you want to see what we're up to. But while you're listening to this episode, go over to PetLifeRadio.com, click on Six Figure Dog Business, listen to all the episodes I've done, and while you're there, listen to all the other shows. They've got some great shows on Pet Life Radio. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.